Welcome to the Off the Charts Football Podcast. I'm Matt Manocherian, former NFL scout and now Vice President of Football and Research at Sports Info Solutions, joined by Schatz, the godfather of football analytics and the founder of Football Outsiders. Our producer, Justin Stein, is out today. He just recently got married, so we extend all of our congratulations out to Justin Stein. And Aaron, how are you in 2020?
Oh, man, this year's been so much different than last year for 2 days. Everything feels new and different and like it's a whole new decade.
Yeah, something like that. But something tells me that football isn't magically going to jump into, the futuristic wonderland that we wish it was.
Every game is going to be like the Chiefs and Rams from last year from now on.
All right, let's get into it. We could talk about a little bit, any of the coaching changes, anything like that you want to discuss before we get into the only 4 important games of this week, the only 4 games of the week.
Dave Gettleman is hiring 4 computer folks.
Oh man, computer folk.
I'd like to announce that I am not the analytics person that Dave Gettleman says that he spoke to. I don't know who it was, but it wasn't me.
Yeah, it'll be a mystery. We'll have to see. Believe it or not, I spoke to a big analytics guy. But what was the word he just threw in there? And he was like computer folk and database or something like that?
He was talking about improving the back end of their scouting system. Improving the back end of your scouting system is a good thing, but it's not analytics.
Whatever
we'll
he
see
said
what
reminded
happens.
me. Have you heard the one with like Antonio Brown where he was doing like the congratulations on your anniversary wedding? That reminded me of how Dave Gettleman sounded talking about computer folk, back ends, like
it's Cameo for $20. Dave Gettleman will congratulate your analytics staff on understanding how Windows works.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I would pay money for that.
As far as the coaching, we don't know. Ron Rivera seems like a nice hire in Washington. Ron Rivera's strengths are, despite his rep as Riverboat Ron, right? Rivera's strengths are not in sort of the analytical part of the game. They're in the motivational part of the game, but that's a team that could use some motivation. So that's probably a good thing. And he was considered a top candidate.
A good coach, you think. I wonder about that organization. Obviously, they're moving on from Bruce Allen. So hopefully they'll be doing things a little bit differently than they've done in the past. But certainly Rivera is more of a nod to the old school.
The Cleveland thing is tough because on one hand, the idea that's been spread in the press that they're now going back in the analytics direction is a positive. On the other hand, the whole organization has this massive problem where they change direction every 2 years. And so why should we have any faith that this change in direction is going to last any longer than the last change in direction or the one before that or the one before that? If this was the direction you wanted to go in, why didn't you go in this direction 2 years ago? It's Jimmy Haslam's mind twists in the wind. Apparently he asks everybody for advice, which is a good thing, and then tends to do whatever the last person that he spoke to told him to do, which is a bad thing because you need to synthesize the advice that you get from lots of people rather than compartmentalizing it.
Yeah, if you take a lot of advice, that's good. But if you only consider the advice that you wanted to hear, then that's not exactly productive.
Or if you hear differing advice, and then you take one thing, one set of advice, and then a month later you're taking a completely different set of advice. There's no long-term plan. And that just seems like that's the story of the Cleveland Browns. There is no long-term plan.
So I have some thoughts on Jimmy Haslam, but reading between the lines on like the D Podesta thing, it seems to me as though the disagreement, I don't think he was ever kind of devalued. I think he was separate. And I think that Haslam was trying to operate with kind of 2 people reporting to him, with D Podesta as well as kind of the traditional football staff, Dorsey and them. And I think that this one, from what I'm understanding, this was a case here of D Podesta last year didn't want Freddie Kitchens as the coach. Freddie Kitchens crashed and burned when Dorsey wanted his guy in that role. And now this was kind of an I told you so from D Podesta and that side of things. And that's why people are saying they're, quote unquote, going in more of an analytics direction again. I kind of just think that's a way of interpreting kind of the re-empowerment by D Podesta here. or backlash against, oh, we feel like this guy in San Diego is making decisions, about us.
Right. But again, it's a lot of changes. And I mean no disrespect here to DePodesta, but if he's going to run the show, he needs to be in Cleveland.
So my thought, going back just a minute about Jimmy Haslam and about ownership in general, it's a lesson that I learned a while ago. And it was funny to me because I was reading an article about Belichick and the Belichick leaving the Jets 20 years ago and how that all went down. And there's kind of like different stories that you hear, different versions of that. But it seems to me one thing's clear is that when Leon Hess died, that changed the situation from Belichick's perspective. And he didn't want to work for an owner that was either going to be Woody Johnson or James Dolan, which were the guys that were quoted in this article that I was reading. So that really makes sense to me because as somebody who's basically written off the Knicks until Dolan is gone, and somebody who's worked for the Browns and seen what can happen when you have an owner like Jimmy Haslam making decisions the way that he does. I think that the franchise really, you can't get out of his way. The buck's going to stop with him. And at the end of the day, if this is how he's making decisions, just changing his mind every 2 years, you could bring in the smartest GM, the smartest head coach, the smartest analytics guys. And it seems like it's broken at the head.
That's always been my worry about having Cleveland as sort of the flagship franchise for analytics, which is why I'm glad that that title has sort of been taken away by the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
They make a much better flagship.
All right. On that note, getting back to kind of the good teams, let's get into the most important games this week. We've got all AFC on Saturday. First one up is going to be the afternoon game, Buffalo at Houston, 2 10-6 teams playing here. What do you make of this matchup?
Well, this is the one I know most about because I'm sort of in the middle of writing an upset watch article for ESPN about it. So it's two teams going in opposite directions. Our ratings, at least, have Houston as the weakest team in the playoffs. We have Houston 19th and Buffalo 13th. But the weighted ratings that give less strength to the games from September and October have Buffalo 10th and Houston 23rd. And that's not just because Houston sat starters in Week 17, because Buffalo also sat starters in Week 17. And what really jumped out when I was looking at all of the stats from this game, first of all, is the injuries, right? There are a lot of injury issues for Houston where the wild card in this wild card game is what does it mean to have J.J. Watt back? What does it mean to have Will Fuller back? How much are these guys going to play? To give an example, Will Fuller, fourth. They were fourth in offensive DVOA if you only count games where Fuller played the whole game. They'd be 27th if you only counted games where Fuller did not play the whole game. And then with Watt, you have a similar split. This is from ESPN's pass rush win rate, but they were 16th when Watt played, and they were 31st when Watt didn't play.
Yeah, I mean, the importance of those two guys, I think that when you look at this matchup, that's definitely the first thing that jumps out to me. Deshaun Watson's the guy who was 9th in points earned amongst wide receivers this year, but Will Fuller is a big key aspect, like you said, of his presence, the way that it changes their entire offense. Similar stuff with J.J. Watt.
I'm assuming you meant DeAndre Hopkins.
Sorry, you're right. I said Deshaun Watson, didn't I? DeAndre Hopkins. And then J.J. Watt was having a crazy season. We were talking about him being one of the best defensive players in the NFL in September before his injury, and he rejoins Whitney Merciless, who's played pretty well throughout the year and been one of the top kind of edge guys out there.
Yeah, but overall, the Texans have not had a strong pass pressure. They have not brought a lot of pressure without Watt. They've got Merciless, but that's about it. Right. So if Watt's back and Watt's at full health, that's a big bonus.
Right. It really depends how much you get from him.
It's interesting. Will they blitz a lot if now that Watt is back? The Texans blitzed a lot this year, but opponents blitzed Josh Allen a lot, and he was very poor against the blitz. But then this is the other stat that I found. The Texans were destroyed, absolutely destroyed, by passes in the short middle of the field. 83% completion rate, 10.8 yards per target, 7.0 average yards after the catch. All those numbers are the worst in the league. And Josh Allen was average on these plays, but the Texans were so bad against them. And now they've lost their free safety to Sean Gibson. who tends to be the guy who covers tight end. But more importantly, this is the land of Cole Beasley. I think Beasley is just going to have a huge game.
Yep, on that side of the ball, I think Cole Beasley could have a big game, like it always is for Buffalo. It's a matter of Josh Allen and what he'll be. The numbers don't like him very much this year. He had just 7 total points earned on the entire season this year. Obviously, can do things with his legs, but just the inconsistency passing the ball. Now, you complete a few nice deep passes, and all of a sudden, statistics be damned, they could win the game. And I'm with you. I think that they've been kind of sharper lately. Flip it on its head. Deshaun Watson was 16th amongst quarterbacks in points earned. Probably not the type of season that really begets his reputation. And I think they're a lot more dependent on their running backs than a lot of people realize. Both handing the ball off, but also Duke Johnson was the 5th in running back total points earned this year, based a lot on the passing game. So looking in that matchup, I think it's interesting because you look on the Buffalo side of the ball, their linebackers are ridiculous in pass coverage. It could be a really tough battle for Duke Johnson in the passing game there. And so you go back and it points you back out towards Will Fuller and what he'll be. You think Tre'Davious White kind of might be canceled out by DeAndre Hopkins. He's been the best corner in the NFL via points saved this year. But then what about the other matchups and what about those other guys? Levi Wallace, good numbers this year. Kevin Johnson, Total Points loves Kevin Johnson this year, the former Houston first-round pick, who didn't have any interceptions this year, but also no touchdowns allowed, 14 completions allowed versus 5 pass breakups on the year. So pretty ridiculous numbers right there.
Yeah, the Bills have a really nice secondary, and their weakness, relative defensive weakness, is the run. So I do think you're right about like Carlos Hyde playing a role as running the ball. Also, Deshaun Watson. These numbers come from ESPN, not SIS. Obviously, each organization charts differently. Because I was preparing an ESPN article, Deshaun Watson has a second in their QBR against man coverage, but only 10th against zone coverage. And the Bills play zone more often than they play man. Tre'Davious White is probably the best zone corner in the league, whereas Stephon Gilmore is the best man corner in the league.
Right. It's interesting. You think teams are probably going to try to sit in there in that zone against Watson as much as they can.
To prevent him from running for one.
Yeah, keep eyes on the quarterback, and then especially if he's not performing as well against that scheme. Tough matchup there against that Bills defense that looks really good.
That's where I think this game is decided, because you're right. Josh Allen is the weakest. He's the weakest quarterback in the playoff picture, but Houston is the weakest pass defense in the playoff picture. But at the other side of the ball, the Bills defense has been much stronger this year than Houston's offense, unless Will Fuller is 100%.
Yep. We are in agreement. The strength of Will Fuller and J.J. Watt, huge X factors. Speaking of other good defenses in the AFC East, the next game on Saturday will also be the AFC game, Tennessee at New England. And I remember early this year, we talked about the seasons that New England and San Francisco were having up front. I mean, on defense. We talked about it probably around week 8 or midseason, just how good these teams were defensively. And you brought up the point that with offense kind of being more predictive than defense, maybe that's a bad sign for those two teams going forward.
And it was.
And certainly, I think you look at New England and the way that their season has progressed. It's been rough on both sides of the ball for them lately. I think a lot of people are expecting a potential upset here. But if your upset watch game was the Buffalo-Houston game, that means that you're not choosing an upset in this game. So what did you make of this one?
Well, first of all, it's very depressing for me to be even talking about this game on this podcast because, first of all, as a Patriots fan, this was one of the worst regular season losses that they've had. And what did we have it at 93% or something that the Patriots were going to get the number 2 seed between the chances of them beating the Dolphins and the small chance of the Chargers beating the Chiefs. So it really did not go well. And that was their worst defensive game of the season. There's no question about it. And this is an interesting game for the question of one game does not decide a statistical question, but this is an interesting game to put in the pile of data for the question of, is it more important to look at how well a team has played recently? And by recently, I don't mean the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean the last 2 months. Or is it more important to look over the entire season? Because over the entire season, the Patriots are the better team. But over the last 2 months, the Titans are the better team.
Yeah, and then you throw in the quarterback change. You add to that, if we were asking this question statistically, you could either look at it, okay, show me just the Tannehill Titans and say, oh, they're better. And then you could look at, okay, show me them apples to apples, the whole team, the whole year. And so,
and then that also brings up another short-term versus long-term question, which is how much do we judge the Tannehill Titans based on the Tannehill Titans, and how much do we judge them based on Tannehill's career? Because Tannehill's career has certainly not been this good.
And it seems like people are already Tannehill's going to get paid. People have pretty much decided at this point. I think if you look at the performance this year, he's mostly earned it. I give a lot of credit to the Tennessee offensive staff, what they've done there. I think it's their third different offensive coordinator in 3 years, and they've done really nice job with what they're doing.
I looked at the SIS stats. Tannehill, 8.7 yards per pass against man compared to 10.6 against zone. So it's better to play man coverage against him, which is a good sign for the Patriots, except 8.7 is still really good.
Yeah. Man.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, it's worse, but it's still pretty good.
So breaking it down a little bit further, Corey March came with some interesting research. The Patriots played the second most cover one in the NFL this year. They faced 256 pass attempts in cover one, and they had the best success rate in cover one this year, 32% success rate for the offense. So really good stuff there. Meanwhile, Ryan Tannehill, if there's been one coverage that he struggled against in 2019, it's been cover one. So in cover one, just 58% passing. Against all other coverages, 76%. The on-target percentage at 68 as opposed to 82 in the other coverages. 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions versus 15 to 4. But, I mean, you look at the EPA numbers, negative 19 EPA against cover one, plus 52 against all other coverages. And then in terms of points earned, negative 10 against cover one and plus 45 against all other coverages. So it could be that the Patriots' strength in coverage-wise, what they want to do defensively, could play right into this one. And we could see that single high stuff be what spoils the Titans.
And this is sort of similar to the Buffalo-Houston game in that, the offense of the Titans being so strong and the Patriots' defense, despite the fact that it's declined in the last few weeks, still being very strong, cancel each other out. On the other side of the ball, for all of the struggles of the Patriots' offense, the fact is this offense has been better than the Titans' defense has been. The Titans' defense has not improved over the second half of the year. It's only their offense that improved over the second half of the year. And we have the Patriots' offense ranked 11th. I know that sounds strangely high, but I mean, there's 11th is kind of close to average because teams are grouped together. But we have them 11th, and the Titans' defense is 16th. And I believe they're 21st against the pass. So it's sort of like this, Brady may find his groove again for 1 week in this game to take this one. I do think an interesting matchup is Harold Landry, who I wished the Patriots had drafted instead of Sony Michel 2 years ago, against Marcus Cannon, who's near the top of the league in SIS's blown block numbers. That's on the right side of the Patriots' offensive line, defensive left. That's going to be an important matchup for the Titans.
Yeah, absolutely. A huge matchup there. And speaking just on the Patriots offense and Tom Brady and that whole decline conversation over the course of the entire season, and this came from Bryce Rossler, the Patriots passing offense has a negative EPA on the year. So Tom Brady passing has negative EPA this year. However, we have him 13th in passing points earned. So the regression by Tom Brady may be even more offense-based than we realized, and have more to do with the guys around him than it's easy to just say he's 42 and he stinks.
It's clearly a mix. Like it's hard to find someone who watches Patriots games closer than me, and it's clearly a mix. He's straight out missing guys. I don't know what was going on with that pick six against Miami, who he was throwing it to. That was just
a bad throw.
But he's also, guys are not in the right place necessarily. Sometimes when he misses guys, it's not, you can see from the way they react to each other afterwards. It's not an issue of him missing guys. It's an issue of the guy not being in the right place. The offensive line has not played as well as years past, although it's been better in the second half of the year. Shaq Mason was struggling. He's played better. They've gotten Isaiah Wynn back at left tackle. That's better. But it's definitely a combination of the two. things. I think the one thing is, and this is kind of getting off the topic of this game, but really quickly, since this is the topic of so much discussion on sports radio in Boston, it's on my mind. So many people talking about, is Tom Brady going to go elsewhere next year? For all of our discussion of how Tom Brady is playing at 42, Tom Brady next year will be 43. Like, I think that to count on the idea that he's going to rebound, he's probably going to get worse.
It's funny. I think if you are an organization that hasn't had a quarterback in a long time, you might try your luck, right? Sell your soul to the devil and get a season of Tom Brady.
The organization that they're talking about doing that around here is the Los Angeles Chargers. And that is not an organization that has not had a quarterback in a long time. That's an organization that has had a very good quarterback for years. And it's just to picture Brady going somewhere and probably not learning a new offense, but having to teach his offense to a bunch of new receivers that he's never worked with before.
Yeah.
At age 43. And to suddenly rebound and be a top 10 quarterback.
He's just 20 years older than N'Keal Harry. It's got to be kind of, Brady wants guys that are going to be where they're supposed to be and know what to do. And that it's got to be an adjustment for him, just dealing with that age gap that just keeps growing and growing and growing.
So I'm going to say right now, lest this be taken as a bitter Patriots fan, if Brady leaves, I do not project that he will suddenly bounce back on a better offense, even though he would have better weapons around him if he was somewhere like the Chargers. I don't think he'll suddenly bounce back. I think he's going to be 43 years old. This is the last roundup, baby.
All right. On that note, let's take it across to the NFC and let's talk about
another quarterback who might be having his last roundup.
Interesting. Let's go there. Minnesota at New Orleans. And I haven't heard a lot of people talking about that. Is that some of the conversation right now? This could be Drew Brees' final hurrah?
I would say it's less Drew Brees' final hurrah because he's playing badly. He's playing really, really well. And more just because his age means that the decline could be coming, right? Like we're always waiting for the decline once the quarterbacks hit this age. It could be coming for Brees, or if the Saints go far this year or even win it all this year, there's theoretically could retire. So this definitely could be the last roundup for Drew Brees. And the Saints are really strong. By weighted DVOA, they're the second strongest team in the playoffs based on, weighting their performance towards the last 2 to 3 months, only behind Baltimore. It sucks. It's funny, in NFL history, only twice has a team won its division at 13-3, but only gotten a third seed, and both times it's been the Saints, and both times the seeds ahead of them were San Francisco and Green Bay.
Yeah, weird how that works out. Going back to Brees just for a second, I think that Brees' decline, I worry about it every time that he goes outdoors and he's got to play in the cold weather, especially, or a windy sort of game. Or
that is the question about next week, isn't it?
So no, that won't be a problem this week, but certainly going into the future, the wind you look at potentially, and the weather being a factor. So that said, when he is, like you said, he's playing out of his mind. And when you look at, we were talking about total points leaders from the quarterback position, Aaron Rodgers actually ends up finishing the season ahead of Lamar Jackson because Lamar Jackson takes the game off. So he obviously doesn't accumulate any total points there. But it was Drew Brees, when you look at it on a per game basis, I think, who actually led the NFL. And in terms of production per game when he was on the field, Drew Brees has been absolutely ridiculous. He still does it at the same high level.
Brees was also number one in past DVOA value per play, also by our numbers. So, yep.
Yeah. So going into this game, I look at him. The Minnesota defense is tough. They've got some pass rushers. Harrison Smith is our top safety in the NFL in terms of points saved. Eric Kendricks, also a really good coverage linebacker. But I worry about what their answer is for Michael Thomas. They
have a weakness against number one wide receivers, and they've had problems with their cornerbacks this year. Everybody knows at this point about Xavier Rhodes' just colossal collapse in his performance this year. And I think Thomas is going to go off.
Yeah, the disappearance certainly there. And it looks good for Michael Thomas. Going on the other side of the ball, you look at Minnesota, they're going to try to control the ball, play action, all that kind of stuff. And I wonder about Dalvin Cook. It seems like it's really been a tale of two seasons for him. When he was healthy, this offense was running right through him. we talk about all the time, the importance of running backs and the questions about that. And they've had other guys that have filled in and done a pretty good job. But I think a big part of their ability to compete in this kind of level, especially going into New Orleans, it could be determined by Dalvin Cook and their ability to kind of do their bread and butter offensively.
Minnesota offense, 22nd in DVOA when running on first down. New Orleans defense, 6th against runs on first down. Overall, the Saints defense, very strong against the run. And you're right, Minnesota's going to want to run. I'm not going to babble here about establishing the run. But what it is sort of the David philosophy of being the underdog on the road. You want to slow down the game. Running the ball doesn't, quote unquote, keep the ball away from the Saints, because you end up where each team basically has the same number of drives, whether you play slow or fast. But the fewer drives you have, the more likely that one or two big plays or one or two big mistakes or one or two random bounces of the ball are going to win the game for you. So I think Minnesota wants to shorten the game like that by slowing it down, whereas New Orleans is going to be track meet.
Yep, no doubt about it. And one last note on this one. New Orleans, even when they're not playing, finds a way to get screwed over by pass interference rules. It's the end of the Seattle-San Francisco game. They don't review that third down. Probably should have been pass interference called. And as a result, New Orleans doesn't get the bye. It's just, kind of, even when they're not directly involved, and you can't point at them as it feels like it's gone that way just time and time again against them.
Minnesota is the best of the 4 road teams in this round, I think. Although, for the whole season, if you look over just recent weeks, it would be Tennessee. But for the whole season's Minnesota. But I think New Orleans is clearly the best of the 4 home teams in this round. And I think this is the least likely upset of the 4 games.
All right, and going to the 4th game of the week, I think we go from the 2 teams that we like better in the NFC wildcard round to the 2 teams that we think are a little bit lesser in this round. Seattle and Philadelphia, obviously their quarterbacks both have the ability to be as good as it comes in the NFL. And these are both –
I don't even know who's playing some of the positions for these teams at this point.
Very flawed teams, lots of injuries. Dwayne Brown now for Seattle. Who knows who's going to be catching the ball for Philadelphia.
Greg Ward, Deontay Burnett.
Yeah. And it's funny. And we say that, and meanwhile, that we're a pass interference call away from Seattle actually winning that game, having the bye, and all those close games that they've won this year could actually have them positioned well. I don't know what I think of this game. This one feels like a total stay away from me. Just because of the injuries that you mentioned there and 2 quarterbacks that can be magical on any given Sunday.
I do like Seattle. I think Seattle's been better this year. They've been stronger on offense, certainly. Our number on offense for Seattle is higher than I think people expect. I actually was talking to Ben Baldwin about this. Seattle's only something like 16th in EPA per play on offense, but they come out 5th in offensive DVOA. And part of that is schedule. They played a very hard schedule of defenses. Philadelphia was sort of kind of average in every phase of the game, whereas Seattle's a little weaker on defense, especially run defense, but strong on offense. And so, the weakest on run defense, Philadelphia is not really a heavy running team. I don't even know who's going to be carrying the ball for them. Will it be Miles Sanders? Will it be Boston Scott? There's so many injuries in this game. It's hard to predict. One thing I will note is Seattle is only 17th against tight ends, so obviously Dallas Goedert's been a really, really big part of Philadelphia's offensive game plan the last few weeks. Will Zach Ertz play again? I don't think so. But there's so many injuries between these 2 teams. I can't tell you who's playing cornerback for Philadelphia at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you there, and you'd think with DK Metcalf, especially against some of the shorter cornerbacks who normally do play. Yeah, I saw Rasul Douglas play last week, and he actually made a couple of nice plays out there. But the normal guys, Mills, Darby, et cetera, and whoever's filling in.
There's a lot of Crayvon LeBlanc last week.
You look at the big receivers. I think it could be something for DK Metcalf in that game, and then the potential of Russell Wilson going off at any time.
One thing I will note: both offenses are particularly strong in the red zone, but that goes for both teams. So it's not an advantage for one team against the other.
Interesting stuff. We will stay tuned and see how everything plays out this weekend. And then we'll be back next week to talk about more. All right. Thank you to all of our listeners. For more from Football Outsiders, check out footballoutsiders.com for all their content and statistics, including DVOA. For more from SIS, you can check out 2 free sites, sportsinfosolutionsblog.com for content and SISdatahub.com for advanced statistics, including total points. For my co-host Aaron Schatz and our producer Justin Stein, happy wedding, Justin. I'm Matt Manocherian, and thank you for joining us for the latest episode of the Off the Charts Football Podcast.